So, you know, we always called Mom the saint in our family because she was a devout Christian, and she believed strongly in the Christian teachings. But she also, you know, that also reflects her experience during the war. So, one time when we were very, very, very poor, we had this budget, and I think it was my mom got $25 a month, and that was what she would use to go grocery shopping for a month. I mean, that's really, and even back in those days, which we're talking about the 60s and 70s, $25 did not go very far. So we would go to our local supermarket. It was a Safeway. I remember exactly where it is. It's still there to this day in Fremont. And back in those days, it was just a store in the middle of literally a field. You know, there was a shopping mall, and then to the right of it was just this gigantic field. There was nothing there. I think at that time, when we moved to Fremont, there was maybe 10, 20,000 people living in the city. Now there's over 250,000. So one day we went there in our Ford Falcon beat-up station wagon, and we went grocery shopping. When we got there, there was this fair, this carnival going on right next to the shopping center. And as typical of little kids, I begged my mother to let me and my sister go to the carnival, you know, at least one ride. We begged and we begged, and Mom said, no, 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 we can't afford it, we can't do that. Let's see what happens. We'll go grocery shopping first. If I have enough, maybe, you know, we'll think about it. So we went grocery shopping. Obviously, Mom was being frugal because she was thinking about this, you know, going to the carnival, and put the groceries in the car, and she said, okay, we'll go one ride at the carnival. So I don't even remember what ride it was, to tell you the truth, because when we got back to the car, we found that the car had been broken into, the back glass had been smashed, and all the groceries were gone. And my mom looked at that and said, well, I hope the people that took our groceries were hungrier than we were. And that really bothered me. I was thinking, well, we should call the police, get the police here, you know. They damaged our car, they took our groceries, you know. And Mom said, no, sit here, I'm going to go back to the grocery store, I'll be right back. So she went back in, whatever little money she had left, she bought stuff, and when we went home, eventually got the car repaired too. That week, or that month, we ate all the things that you just can't believe how... I mean, back in those days, I think about it and I say, we actually had these things for dinner. One of them was our famous red rice, which is leftover rice with leftovers mixed together, fried in in bacon grease, and then ketchup poured on it to make it taste good. And we had something that she called corn fritters, which was pancakes with corn in it, served with maple syrup, and that was dinner, you know. Needless to say, that was a tough time, you know, a couple weeks. And then shortly thereafter, my aunt, your great aunt, Aunt Lily, came by. At that time, Lily was married to an engineer. She had lots of money, you know. She flaunted it too. And, you know, we didn't have a lot. Mom had to really scramble to get stuff together, and you know, because Lily was used to eating well and whatever. So I told Aunt Lily about this story, and I said I was really upset because, you know, Mom didn't make a big fuss about this, and I was really unhappy about this. So she pulls me aside, you know, that stern look, because Aunt Lily was still she wasn't the Aunt Lily that you know that's the party girl. She was a really strict person back there. Pulls me aside and said, Richard, you have to understand, your mom and I and Uncle George survived bombings, burned houses, with going without food for days and days and days during the war. A few stolen groceries don't mean a lot. In the big picture of things, we are lucky to be alive, and we're grateful we're here day after day. So, stolen groceries, no big deal. So, you know, it's a matter of perspective. In her perspective, smashed car and stolen groceries weren't that big a deal, you know. So, but that was your mom, your grandmother. She was, you know, always forgiving, and that's the way she was all her life. Your uncle my brother David had to go to this camp that was up in Tahoe. It was a Baptist summer camp. And so at that point, I just turned 21. I was in college, the big guy on the campus. And, I was living close to home. I was still at Cal Berkeley. So I said, Mom, I'll drive you and David up to the camp. I had an ulterior motive, obviously. Because in Tahoe, it's split. Half is in Nevada and half is in California. And the half is in Nevada. Gambling is allowed, so there are casinos in Tahoe. So we drive my brother up to the camp and drop him off, and I tell my mom, Mom, I just turned 21. How about if we just stop for a few minutes and go to the casino? And she says, okay. So we drive up to the first casino we get to. And in those days, they were these tiny little things, and it was one story, and mainly slot machines. So I bring her into the casino, and I get her a roll of quarters, and I say, all you do is you take the quarters, you put it in the machine, you pull the handle, and if you win, money will come out. If you don't win, you put another quarter in. I'm not gone 5 minutes. I think I was getting, another roll of quarters or whatever, and I hear my mother scream, ah! The bells are going, and the thing is flashing. And I come up to my mom, and of course she hit this jackpot. It was like, I don't know, $600 jackpot, something like that. And I'm not there. I'm there maybe 5 minutes. I haven't even had a chance to do it. And she says, we're done. We're leaving. And I said, okay, Mom. You don't argue with Mom. So she gets her winnings, and we start driving home. She says, I'm going to take you to that nice restaurant we like to go to. I think it's called the Nut Tree House or something like this. Midway between Tahoe and our home. That was a place we frequently go to. So we get to the restaurant, and she orders this very nice dinner, and we eat, and we get in the car, and she is still in this foul mood. She just, and not her typical self, sit in the car, like this the whole way. So finally I said, okay, Mom, what's wrong? I said, no, I don't want to talk. I said, come on, Mom, we're good. We have another hour and a half drive ahead of us. She says, well, we're Baptists. I said, okay. She said, there are two things we're not supposed to do. I said, well, we're not supposed to drink. She said, yeah, that's why we serve grape juice at the communion. I said, but the other thing is we're not supposed to gamble. And she says, I remember in the Bible the story of Jesus coming into the temple, tossing the tables around where the gamblers were. And then the other story is where the Roman soldiers were gambling over the robes of Jesus' body. Gambling is a bad thing. And I said, okay, Mom. And I thought about it. I said, so what do you want to do about it? She said, I don't know, I'm very upset. I said, okay, Mom, I have a solution. Tomorrow's Sunday, put all your winnings in the offering dish. And then she had this big smile on her face. Said, yeah, that's a good idea. So that next Sunday, the church got an anonymous donation for whatever it was, $600, and it wasn't a dime less. It was the whole thing into the offering plate. And that was your mom, my grandmother. Your grandmother, my mom. She was that way. She had principles and she stuck to them. So amazing. She looked like a typical American housewife, but she had these attributes that were very different. Well, I went to Japan a couple of times, and that was part of the tradition. You go there for education, or you go there to meet relatives. I would spend the summers traveling with a group of students. The dad knew this guy who I call Sensei Watanabe, which just simply means Teacher Watanabe or Professor Watanabe. He used to stay at our house all the time when he would be in the United States, so the trade-off was, quid pro quo. I got to stay with him when I was there in Japan. And we would travel the country and got to see some amazing things, all the way from Osaka to Tokyo. Spent time in Nara and Kyoto. I got to go on a fishing boat in the Naragawa, which is one of those long boats that drifts down the river, and then the fishing birds jump off the bow of the boat, and they come back when they have fish, and they regurgitate the fish. This is very interesting because you got this fish regurgitated, and then they prepare it and you eat it on the ship, on the boat. That was an interesting experience. And in that place, it was hot springs, and when you go into the hotel, it has actually the water bubbling down from the hot springs in the entrance, and all the tubs and pools are from the hot springs. They are hot, by the way. I don't know how people get into them, but they do. And some of the most beautiful, old castles in the world are there in Nara and Kyoto. I learned how to gamble, even better. We used to play mahjong for money all the time. It's college students, and some card game that I don't know how to describe anymore. And they all smoked and they all drank. Oh, and there's this favorite game that I really liked. It was called Pachinko. They had these Pachinko parlors. They're sort of like, I guess, a slot machine where it would be vertical, and you'd click on these things, and these little steel balls would go up, and they'd be, have these things that would have nails, and then they'd bounce around. And then there were like little flowers, and if they dropped in the flower, you got like 30 balls. If the flower's open, you got 100 balls. And then there were special things. It's like gambling. And people would be there for hours just going zing, 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 zing. I'm not sure if you've ever seen a pachinko machine. Also worked at my grandmother's restaurant in Omori. It was called the Frisco, after where we were living in San Francisco. Grandma was the grandmother on my mother's side. It was the business person. Very interesting place. Made tons of money, not on food, but on alcohol. She had these private rooms in the back. Remember, she used to be a former geisha. And these businessmen would come and have their meetings there. And they would literally drink thousands of dollars worth of sake. You'd be just bringing bottle after bottle after bottle of sake. So, traveled around Tokyo a lot. One of the experiences I had is I was on the Ginza. This is I guess in the 70s. And remember where I grew up in California, middle-class America. I was the shortest. There were only 2 kids that were as short as me in my high school. Everybody was gigantic. I didn't have my growth spurt until college. I think I graduated college at 5'1", and after my freshman year I was 5'7". But 5'1", there were only like 3 other girls that were shorter than me too. So in Tokyo, I'm shopping on the Ginza, and I stand at a crosswalk in front of an intersection. And it dawns on me that I'm looking over everybody's heads. I am really tall. I'm like, whoa. I'm a head taller than the next tallest person. It's amazing. So it also was a problem because when I went to Japan that time, I figured I'd buy my clothes there, because it would fit and be cheaper. Well, in the 70s, that's when the prices of things started to go up. But what made it worse is I had to shop at a big and tall store. And everything was more expensive. So a dress shirt was like $50, which sort of floored me. So that was, different times. When I landed in the plane, going out there one time, there was a mob. And there were all these young people. It was a mob scene, and I was like, oh my God, it must be a riot. So I worked my way through the crowd, and by that point I knew how to use the transport system. I didn't even need people to pick me up, right? I got on the monorail and went home. Actually, my uncle met me at the airport because I have luggage with me. And we got home, and I immediately turned on the news to find out what was this riot in the airport in Narita airport. It was the Beatles. They had arrived at the same time. It was their first time in Tokyo. They were on the same concourse as me. Their British airline and Japan Airlines shared the same, whatever, jetway. So we were getting off at the same time, and I was there. I had my Forrest Gump moment. I had a chance to see the Beatles, and I missed them. So the riot had nothing to do with me. It was the 70s. Now, I started at Cal before I actually enrolled as a college student. As a high school student, I took courses there and summer things there. So I was at Cal frequently. It was only a, BART ride away, and it was nearby, and you could drive there. I used to actually drive there. And one day, I was crossing the campus, and all of a sudden, I don't know, riots like to follow me, I guess. I don't know. I got sucked up into this riot. All these people were running, and suddenly I'm like being dragged along with this crowd. And I'm on my way to the physics building. Just minding my own business, right? Next thing I know, helicopters are coming overhead. Tear gas is being dropped everywhere, and I'm like running for my life. Anyways, it turned out that was one of the early parts of the Berkeley riots. Shortly thereafter, the governor called in the National Guard, and there were guardsmen. Actually, my parents took me out of school when that happened. I was no longer going to Berkeley during the riots. Dad was very, well, I don't want to say he was conservative, but there were certain things he was conservative about, and he was not, because he was an American citizen and he strongly felt you did what the country asked you to do. He felt that, you had to serve the country, and he thought these people that were protesting war were evil, not because the war was evil, but because they weren't willing to serve for their country. So, anyways, that was interesting times. So I was there for a couple of years. I was a physics major. Eventually what happened was I had to declare a double major because a lot of people were avoiding the draft by staying in college forever, right? So Nancy came up with this scheme that if you hit the certain number of credits, you had to graduate, whether you completed your degree or not. I think it was like 220 credits. Well, when I walked into Berkeley, I already had like 95 credits before even starting my first day there. So I was like up to 190 credits, and I hadn't completed my degree, and this ruling came down. And I said, well, that leaves me only 25 credits. I can't complete my degree in 25 credits. So I had to declare, the exception was if you had a double major. So I had to declare a double major, and I declared it in biology, math and physics, and I couldn't do a biology double major at Cal Berkeley, so I had to transfer. I ended up transferring to Santa Barbara, and so right around the time of the Santa Barbara oil spill.